The final patch of Set 9 will bring some wild changes. Firstly, many low-cost units are getting pretty huge buffs, which will return their reroll potential in this last patch. Although these Kassadin and Karma buffs do look very scary. But that's not all. Every single one of the 11 different Rise variants will also be seeing buffs. Trait-wise, Freljord, Gunner and Bruiser are getting buffed, but the largest buff is to Zorn, where 5 of the 6 mods are having their output increased. There will also be buffs to Heimerdinger, where Meccano's damage is higher, and Refractor Beam is not only getting a huge damage buff across the board, but also the turret can now crit and will share its crit chance with Heimerdinger. Of course, this wouldn't be a proper Set 9 patch if there wasn't any glaring issues. And in this patch, those issues are the insane buffs to Silco, where not only is Zorn generally far stronger, but now Silco will also have his mana cost significantly reduced. But which comps will dominate this patch? How does Jeweled Lotus now interact with Heimerdinger? And is this final patch worth playing? Before we get into that, remember to subscribe. So I'll start off by answering which comps will dominate this patch. And that answer is very simple. It's any comp that has Silco in it. This Silco mana buff is just so silly, especially when you consider the effect of blue buff. Previously, Silco's mana cost was reduced from 45 to 35 by blue buff, which meant that he needed at most 4 autos in between casts. But now, blue buff will be reducing his mana to 20, so he will need at most 2 autos in between casts, which means that his cast frequency will be more than doubling. And I say more than double because Silco is casting far more often, and so he will be getting the takedown mana more reliably from blue buff. Now, Silco's damage is getting nerfed by around 12%, and his healing at 2-star is getting nerfed, but that just doesn't come close to offsetting this mana buff. Oh, and did I mention that Ahri is also getting damage buffs to her wave? There's already a Sorc comp amongst the best comps in the game, so with this Silco and Ahri buff, this comp will just be far stronger. And with the huge buffs to the Zorn mods like Virulent Bioware and Hextech Exoskeleton, these Silco comps can be even more powerful. I mean, just watch this Taric. He's literally unkillable due to the absurd healing, damage reduction, and the CC immunity from Exoskeleton. Although the only mod that isn't getting buffed is Unstable Chemtank, probably because players have already become sick of this item due to Jarvan, and how he was by far the best user of this mod, despite innately not being a Zorn unit. Anyway, Sorcerer comps use every single one of the Zorn mods extremely well, and if you manage to overcharge them in this comp, well, then you've won the game. So every comp that has Silco in it has become wildly stronger due to how much utility he can bring, his insane casting frequency, and his damage output. As I say that, this is probably the biggest counter to this comp, so make sure you avoid this at all costs. Anyway, as I said, many low-cost units are getting buffed, so you should probably expect many reroll comps to resurface, especially around Karma, Kassadin, and even Darius, who are seeing insane buffs that scale incredibly well with their traits. Both Karma and Darius will be casting way more often and dealing a lot more damage, but Kassadin's buff is only really relevant if you have his hero augment. But these changes aren't really bringing anything new. And finally, there's small buffs to the AD scaling from Gunner, the true damage from Freljord, and there's a new breakpoint in Bruiser at 3. This combined with buffs to Zorn, Heimer, and Vi will influence Piltover and make playing it far easier and stronger as the power ceiling is far higher now. For example, Meccano Swarm and Refractor Beam will be much more impactful, especially with Refractor Beam being able to crit. And yes, that does mean that augments like Jeweled Lotus will be twice as effective with the turret, because the turret gains the crit chance directly from the augment and then gets it again from Heimerdinger. So you should probably expect to see some Heimer critter builds in this patch. So with all of these buffs, 6 Piltover will feel incredibly powerful. But obviously that's only if you can hit. And that's not including throwing in one of the buffed versions of Rise. These Rise buffs are mostly just mana buffs, but there's more to Noxus and Bilgewater. Noxus is getting one more axe at 1-star, and the chest Bilgewater drops is doubling in size. And that should cover all of the most notable changes in this upcoming patch. So should you play this patch? Yeah, absolutely not. As I said, this is your typical Set 9 patch, where there's clear outliers that form a very sharp meta, and this makes playing non-meta comps feel absolutely awful. But even if you assume this patch is promising and balanced, By the time this patch hits live servers, Set 10 will already have gone live on the PBE. And if you watched my video on what we know so far about Set 10, then you should know that Set 10 will just be far superior to Set 9. We'll find out more tomorrow on November 5th when the TFT dev drop is released. But if you do want to try this patch, then hop onto the PBE before Set 10 replaces it. But honestly, there's no real reason to play this patch as there's just nothing special. But yeah, I'll end the video on that note. I personally don't think this patch is worth playing, but what do you think? Will you try it, or do you only really care about Set 10? Let me know in the comments, and remember to subscribe. Anyway, check out these other videos if you want to see more from me, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.